Okay, good evening. The lights go out. Welcome to the Urban Institute. I'm Mary Cunningham. I'm the Vice President of the Metropolitan Housing Community Center here at Urban. The Urban Institute's mission is to help build a future where every person and every community have the opportunity and the power to thrive. We do this by equipping changemakers with evidence-based solutions to some of society's biggest challenges. I'm going to start off tonight's event with just a little bit of housekeeping. So I want to let you know that the event is being recorded and that the recording will be posted online after the event. Speaker bios and slides are available online at urban.org. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time for audience questions, but feel free to email events@urban.org if you have questions or concerns. And you can engage with us online using the hashtag #live@urban. So now on to why I'm so excited to have all of you here tonight. We are spotlighting a recent project here at Urban, the Los Angeles County Women's Needs Assessment Study. This study is a stellar example of how we partner with local communities and bring data to the challenges they face. The study is the largest and most rigorous completed to date that is focused exclusively on women experiencing homelessness as individuals. It answers important questions about the characteristics and experiences of women who experience homelessness in LA, and it informs pressing policy and programmatic questions. As all of you here tonight likely know, the number of individuals experiencing homelessness has been increasing for a number of years in the United States, and this has also been the case in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, 1 in 5 individuals experiencing homelessness are women. That's over 14,000 women. Most of these women are staying in unsheltered settings, and the number of women experiencing homelessness is growing in Los Angeles. This reflects some of the recent national trends in homelessness. Because of these trends, the study and its findings provide timely and urgent data to improve our policy and programmatic responses to homelessness among women. So we have a great program here for you tonight. First, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who's actually on her way, so we might switch around the order a little bit because that's how it goes in Washington. We're going to actually start with the research team who's going to present some headline findings and recommendations from the study. Then Congresswoman Waters will give her remarks, and then we're going to end with a panel discussion where we'll dive into the important implications of the work. So I am going to turn it over to the co-principal investigator of the study, Principal Research Associate Urban, Samantha Bacco.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. As you see, we're switching things up a little bit here, but we'll jump right in. As Mary mentioned, my name is Samantha Bacco, and I'm a Principal Research Associate here at the Urban Institute, and I serve as the co-principal investigator for the study that we're discussing this evening. Before we jump in, I do have some thank yous to start with. The first is to my co-principal investigator, Sophia Herrera, with the Hub for Urban Initiatives, who was unable to join us today. And I'd also like to thank the other Urban Institute members of our research team who have been with us since the start of the project, Dr. Lyndon Bond, who's joining me on the stage today, and Kayla Gerard, who's part of our event staff running around making sure that everyone is where they're supposed to be. I'd also like to thank all of the women who made this study possible. First and foremost, the women who participated in listening sessions and who took surveys. Behind all of the findings that we're going to present tonight are these women. It was our absolute privilege to meet them, and we're humbled by the stories that we heard from them. I also want to thank the women who joined the steering committee and the advisory committees for this project, and the many, many volunteers who administered surveys, 90% of whom were women themselves. And finally, I'd like to thank the funders for this project, the Downtown Women's Center and the Los Angeles County Homeless Initiative. And a number of those people are going to be joining us on the panel in just a little bit. As Mary mentioned, this study is the largest and most rigorous to date in Los Angeles and more broadly in the US that was targeted specifically to women experiencing homelessness as individuals. In the spring of 2022, nearly 100 women participated in listening sessions and interviews. And in the fall of 2022, nearly 600 women completed a 78-question survey. The study was designed from the outset to integrate women experiencing homelessness in every stage of the research, from design to data collection to analysis, as part of a community-gauged approach to the research project. In addition to the large number of women experiencing homelessness who participated in listening sessions and surveys, the project engaged both steering committee, comprised of women with lived experience of homelessness and professional experience as providers to services of women experiencing homelessness, and an advisory committee comprised of subject matter experts. The findings from the study are truly community informed and carry great significance for understanding the homelessness experiences of women, as well as the ways in which the systems and programs we build can better meet the needs of women experiencing homelessness. And what we're going to highlight in the coming minutes is just a small snapshot of what the study covers. We encourage everyone to read the report, and I'm going to turn it over to Lyndon to talk about women's characteristics and their experiences.
Thanks, Sam. So as Sam mentioned, we spoke with nearly 100 women during our listening sessions and surveyed nearly 600 women. And we learned important information about the characteristics of women and their experiences of homelessness. So first, we wanted to answer the key question: what are the characteristics of women experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles County? And what we learned is that they are a diverse group. Women experiencing homelessness as individuals ranged from 18 years old to 83 years old. 34% of women identified as Hispanic or Latina, and about 32% of women identified as Black or African American. And almost 8% identified as transgender. In addition, about 1 in 5 women identified as bisexual, lesbian, gay, queer, or another sexual orientation. Aside from demographics, we asked women about their lives, including their history with partners, children, employment, and health. And we found that at the time of the survey, all women were seeking services unattached to a partner, spouse, or children, but over half of women had experienced a separation from a partner or spouse in their lifetime, and over half of women had either adult or minor children. We also found that nearly 30% of women were experiencing homelessness were working for pay, trading goods or services with others, or both. And among those not currently working, 2/3 identified as having a disability. We also asked women about their health, and most women reported their overall health as fair or poor, and dental health was actually rated the poorest. Okay. So another important aspect of the study was really to understand women's experiences of homelessness. And we found that most women experienced multiple episodes of homelessness over their lifetime, and over half of women had reported at least one prior episode before the time of the survey. And over 80% of women had experienced lifetime homelessness of over a year, with 40% of women having had lifetime experiences of homelessness longer than 5 years. And one thing we really wanted to highlight is that we also heard this during listening sessions where women described experiencing homelessness for longer than they had expected to, and saying that the timelines they had been given for their housing search were frequently extended, and they felt that there was a loss of time while experiencing homelessness. We also asked women where they most often slept, and as with many people experiencing homelessness in LA County, women reported most often sleeping in unsheltered situations, with about 40% saying they often slept on the streets, and about 20% reporting that they most often slept in vehicles such as cars or RVs. And last, we asked women about their experiences of victimization. And when asked, nearly 90% of women reported that they had experienced victimization at some point in their lives. For many, this victimization occurred while they were experiencing homelessness. And we wanted to highlight a few experiences we learned. About 3 in 5 women reported having something had stolen from them. About 40% of women had reported being attacked, and about 1 in 5 were forced to take part in unwanted sexual activity. So now I'm going to turn it back to Sam to discuss barriers to housing and shelter.
Thanks, Lyndon. We know that housing ends homelessness. Countless studies and everyday practice in communities across the country have shown this for many, many populations, including women. But women reported significant barriers to exiting homelessness and securing housing. The most frequently reported barrier to permanent housing was a lack of housing that women could afford and long wait lists for accessing vouchers in public housing. One woman summarized this saying, "I only get $1,000 to pay for housing, for HUD housing, but you gotta wait 5 to 10 years. I'll probably be dead by then." But these were not the only barriers. Women also described facing discrimination in the private rental market, having challenges finding landlords willing to take a voucher or willing to take women with an incarceration history, and barriers within the system, having been assessed by coordinated entry, but not being referred to housing. In the absence of housing, we know that people need shelter. Unfortunately, women reported significant barriers to accessing and using shelter as well. The most common reported barrier was feeling unsafe, with more than half of women citing this concern. Other barriers to shelter included a lack of availability, concerns about privacy, and lack of shelter options that met their needs and preferences. Of note, only 1 out of every 20 women found that they did not face some kind of barrier to accessing shelter. And in particular, Black and transgender respondents reported particular concerns. Black women were significantly more likely to report concerns about treatment from staff when compared with non-Hispanic white women and Hispanic or Latina women. And cisgender women were significantly more likely to report facing no barriers to shelter compared with transgender and non-binary individuals. We also asked women what they wanted in housing, and the women were very clear. They wanted 3 top priorities: affordability, safety, and privacy. Of note, safety was rated as essentially an equal high priority as affordability. All of these data on women led us to make 5 primary recommendations. The first, support efforts to collect data on and tailor services to women experiencing homelessness as individuals. With the number of women experiencing homelessness growing in Los Angeles and nationally, and the clear vulnerabilities and challenges that women face based on the study's findings, it is essential that we collect and report data on women's experiences, needs, and preferences in order to track progress in ending homelessness among women. Second, fund housing assistance at the level needed to house all women experiencing homelessness, namely funding universally available housing assistance vouchers. Women identified a lack of affordable housing and long waiting lists for housing assistance as their primary barriers to permanent housing. Additionally, women in listening sessions described not being prioritized for housing in coordinated entry. A universal voucher approach provides the clearest path forward to ending homelessness for all women. And third, prioritize safety throughout the homelessness response system. As previously noted, women identified safety as a concern across almost every domain in the study, and prioritizing women's physical and emotional safety will require developing and implementing programs and policies that recognize the unique needs and preferences of women. I'll turn it to Lyndon to close us out.
Thanks, Sam. So for the 4th recommendation, we shared that women should be provided dignity in the absence of housing. 70% of women reported that it was difficult to find a bathroom, and 60% reported difficulty finding a shower when they needed one. In the absence of housing, ensuring women have dignified access to bathrooms, showers, and storage of possessions is particularly important. Dignity in services also requires removing barriers that prevent access to services and shelter, such as systemic racism and discrimination. As one woman said to us during the listening sessions, apart from the safety, which is important, I want a place that is going to be like a refuge to rest and not worry that a person is going to harass me, bully me, be misunderstood. A place where you can have people visit you and accept you. And last, our last recommendation is to encourage programmatic response accountability when it comes to ensuring equitable outcomes for historically marginalized groups, particularly Black, Hispanic and Latina, Indigenous, and other women of color, as well as LGBTQ individuals. In addition to tracking outcomes and understanding the experiences of historically marginalized groups and programs, service providers and programs should consider that women's needs may vary based on a variety of characteristics, their individual histories, and where they may be in their life cycle. The 2022 Los Angeles County Women's Needs Assessment sets an important new baseline for addressing homelessness among unaccompanied women. This study, the largest and most rigorous analysis of women's homelessness in Los Angeles County, highlights critically important policy and programmatic issues facing the county in its efforts to address homelessness and points to meaningful opportunities to help women experiencing homelessness. Our goal in this project was to elevate the importance of these issues and also elevate the voices of women who have experienced homelessness to provide a roadmap forward to ending homelessness among women. We hope this study and report provide a sense of urgency to us for accomplishing this and look forward to participating in these efforts moving forward. Thank you so much for coming this evening, and I will turn it over to Mary.
Okay, I am told Congresswoman Waters is on her way. So I think it's going to be closing remarks, and we're going to actually, instead of welcoming remarks, so we're going to invite our panelists up to the stage. So please come on out. And I will introduce them as after we start the discussion. Okay, welcome. We have a great group of women here today talking about the study and the implications for on the ground. I'm going to actually start with Sam. Sam, you've already introduced yourself, so I'm going to start with you've spent a lot of time in LA executing this study, a lot of time analyzing the data that you collected, and a lot of time writing the report with your co-authors and team. What do you want, after all of that work, what do you want people to take away most from the study?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. It's a 100-page report. I encourage everyone to read it front to back. But in all seriousness, there's so much valuable information on every single page. We captured so much information about women, and if I had to limit myself to just one takeaway, it would be around safety. And I feel like we heard about safety across every domain that we asked about, from shelter concerns to victimization among women who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, to reasons for leaving permanent housing, to causes of homelessness, to desires for permanent housing and shelter. And so I think that for me, when I think about the implications for practice, the implications for policy, it's thinking about how we embed safety at every layer of what we're doing for women experiencing homelessness, which can also only be good for everyone else experiencing homelessness too. And then because I'm very not good at narrowing things to one, I have a second. And so in a listening session that I led last May at LA Family Housing, out on a patio in the beating sun with everyone wearing N95 masks, one of the women in the session said to me that we had to take these stories and change something, that it couldn't just be them telling their story again and nothing happening. And so we as a research team have really taken that charge very seriously. And now by you coming, you are complicit and you have agreed to, by attending today, to also take that charge very seriously. And I think that tonight is really the start of using this report and using the stories that these women gifted us with to actually make real change for them.
So as you noted, there's a lot of new information coming out of this study. What's next on the research agenda?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that I speak for everyone on the table here where this is the 8th Women's Needs Assessment, just the first one that was done countywide. And so continuing to document trends in homelessness among women and their experiences while experiencing homelessness and hoping to see progress on some of these measures that we have is one. I think the next is also starting to study the implementation of those changes. So when we heard from women about safety, we heard from some women that they wanted women-only programs. We heard from other women that actually having male security guards made them feel safer. So actually getting into the details of what implementation looks like in a mixed methods way, where we're capturing information about women's outcomes, but also about their experiences in a qualitative way within those programs and with those changes is the next step.
Great. Okay, Amy, my next questions are for you, but I'm going to introduce you first. This is Amy Turk, is the Chief Executive Officer of the Downtown Women's Center, DWC. Amy began her tenure at DWC in 2013 as the Chief Program Officer and was appointed CEO in early 2020. Welcome, Amy. So my question for you is, this is the first county-wide assessment, but it's the 8th Women's Needs Assessment that DWC has participated in. So tell me, that's a long commitment. Tell me why DWC has put its power behind this assessment.
I think it's mostly a story of women being left behind. Downtown Women's Center started in the Los Angeles Skid Row community in 1978. That's when women started emerging as experiencing homelessness in a more visible way. And our founder was in an AmeriCorps role doing outreach in the Skid Row community, where there had been missions serving men for already 70 years, but not serving women. And she found a woman experiencing homelessness. They founded the Downtown Women's Center together. Flash forward, they ran as a day center for many years. She bought the building next door to the day center and turned it into permanent housing, all before creating shelter, though one mission converted a gym into a women's shelter, probably late 1990s. They closed it, and we lost our referral source for shelter, and that pissed us off. And we started the Downtown Women's Action Network, and that began the first women's needs assessment in the Skid Row community. Every 3 years, serving women experiencing homelessness in the Skid Row community and lifting up their voices into action. And we continue to do this every 3 years, 8 times now, because so little continues to be said about women, particularly women outside of families. And we've helped other communities. I know DC with Miriam's Kitchen's support did a needs assessment. Sarah's Circle in Chicago did a needs assessment. And then HUD, thank you to our HUD partners, started separating out gender in 2015 in the annual, in the HR report. And most recently started sharing how many women are individuals. And so we now know nationally 57% of women experiencing homelessness are individuals. Mm-hmm. They're not looking for help with the family in that moment. And we saw that trend in Los Angeles too. So, our Chief Communications Officer, Lorena Sanchez, just underscored an important point that I think speaks to the purpose of the report. It's the how of the what of our point in time counts. It's the so what with the numbers that we see, and it gives us a policy platform to move forward on.
So as a follow-up, here at the Urban Institute, we believe in data and research as a powerful tool to make change, but only if it actually leads to change.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the change that you've seen from the assessment?
Yeah, our philosophy here is that data becomes policy, and that becomes resources. And we've seen that come true with this needs assessment over the years in 4 significant ways. One, that we're now making data-informed decisions at Downtown Women's Center, and hopefully other partners are too. We're now using a targeted universalism approach, and I'll go into some examples of these. 3, it definitely drives policy, and 4, it's brought about more resources. So, thinking about data-informed decisions, we now know that unaccompanied women make up the majority, and that they're more systems impacted. They're more likely to have longer lengths of homelessness and worse outcomes related to health, et cetera. Uplifting the importance of a targeted universalism approach. At Downtown Women's Center, we do a full continuum of services for women experiencing homelessness. And when we say women, we do mean gender expansive. We serve 5,700 a year. We serve families, veterans, justice-involved, domestic violence survivors, many subpopulations. But we build our services targeted to what the data shows us has the most need. And for us, that's unaccompanied African-American women who are literally homeless outside. And when we make sure we have services for them, we know that we will have services for all that come to us. It's driven policy significantly in Los Angeles. The city council passed a motion designating unaccompanied women as the priority population. The county followed suit. And we passed a state bill last year in partnership with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence and Rainbow Services, a domestic violence service. That bill will now require every continuum of care, every city and county that receives state funding to build goals to address homelessness among unaccompanied women and domestic violence survivors. So we're obviously hoping that trend follows the nation from California, but you can't just build a goal and meet the goal without resources. So the fourth point is that it brings resources in. We've seen that in the Skid Row community. Namely, when those motions passed, we received $6 million to keep one of the project room keys open that was being reimbursed by FEMA as the COVID response, and to start more concentrated outreach for women in our community. And then that has moved into a state initiative, the state encampment grant, all because we have the data and the policy to drive the resources.
That's so great to hear. Tiffany, I am coming to you next. Let me start by introducing you. Tiffany Duvernay-Smith is the Lived Experience Advisory Board Coordinator for the Los Angeles Homelessness Services Authority, and she served as a member of the steering committee for this project. Welcome, Tiffany, to the Urban Institute. So you were a member of the steering committee?
Yes.
And throughout the duration of this project, so can you tell us a little bit about that experience? What did you do as a member? How did you feel about your experience?
So, a little reflection. I joined the steering committee and participated in monthly meetings. Mm-hmm. I helped design the listening sessions and the survey. Mm-hmm. Serving as a liaison to Los Lived Experience Advisory Board, where I'm the coordinator, and having the opportunity to report back to the steering committee and the advisory. Is it advisory council? Advisory committee. From a data walk. And the feedback from that data walk included the importance of incorporating people's voices and stories, not just the data, which Sam already mentioned, how important qualitative data is, right? And what I felt strongly about when hearing the results was that 54% of women felt that providers were understanding and empathetic. This is beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. Not to me. Because what I heard was that 40% of women did not think that way. And that's a huge number. And happy that I was able to express that to the group. And just liking that data becomes policy, which becomes the resources, and making data-informed decisions. And I just wanted to say that before being the coordinator at LASA, I was a document specialist. And is that the hotel I worked at, the one you're referring to?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I worked at that hotel as a document specialist, just helping the women or people identified as women with their trying to get, this is during COVID, right? Mm-hmm. So Social Security cards, almost impossible. IDs, almost impossible. Housing verifications, the verification of disability. And so glad that you were able to keep this going. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Great. So I have another question for you. So you heard Sam and Lyndon presented the data. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, now that you've had sort of a little bit of time, I know you were a big part and instrumental in designing the study and making sure we're collecting the right data. What do you hear when you hear the data presentation? What's your reaction?
So for me, I just have to say I really believe in the listening to the people who are having the experience. And this is how we get our emotions involved, right? It taps into our empathy, our compassion. It moves us to move change with the pen, right? But this quantitative data is pretty impactful. And so for me, it creates heartbreak. Mm-hmm. And I was one of those accompanied women feeling the discrimination, feeling that maybe the services are not available to me because I don't have the children. that reflects that this is an emergency for me. And listening to the data was hard because I'm identifying with what's being said. So I'm one of the women that was sleeping in my car. I remember going to Downtown Women's Center. It's like, no, I don't want to be in this shelter environment. I remember touring a shelter, another shelter, and my body, my physiological responses told me, I don't think so. Nobody's going to be jumping me. Nobody's going to be stealing my stuff, right? And this whole thing about dignity, if I remove my pride, I know people have gone long times without bathing. It's obvious when you look out there. But I remember the longest for me was 5 days, and that's hard, you know? I don't think that, I don't even know what day it is. It might be Wednesday, is it? Or is it Tuesday?
I had to think too. I was like, was it Tuesday?
So if you want to, don't bathe again until Sunday. I don't really think any of you are going to do that. But for me, just remembering some of the things and identifying with the findings for me. And so just emotional at the launch last week. Yeah. And just thinking that this is not data, these are people. These are women. So it's not the numbers. Each number is like a real person, and just how important it is to stay connected to that. And then also disappointed that things haven't changed. So identifying so much with what I'm hearing is just this is like a slap in the face, knock in the stomach, just a reality check that things have not gotten better since I was experiencing homelessness. So we're going 2010 to 2015. So here we are 8 years later. What are we really doing?
Well, so I want to thank you for being here, for giving women that voice and also sharing your personal experiences. And I want to just ask you one more question.
Okay.
What do you want to see in Los Angeles for women who are experiencing homelessness?
So I'm going to go to the post that I did in the car on the way.
Perfect. Perfect.
And I do want to say that as I was listening to you two talk, I was like, I was in hiding. I was in hiding in a way. I would not have been seen. I wouldn't have been in the count. I wouldn't have been a part of this needs assessment, the surveying, the listening sessions. I wouldn't have been a part of any of that. I was at one point hiding in somebody's garage, sleeping, and they didn't even know it. So I would not have been seen. And so my reflections are in this little box. One moment, please.
Take your time.
Didn't work. Okay. I hope for new policies and programs addressing specific needs. I hope for humanization versus criminalization. I hope for safety, affordability, and privacy, which is what women want, according to this. And it's important that we recognize that unhoused, unaccompanied women are a distinct, vulnerable group of people experiencing homelessness who require unique policies, solutions, and services. Quoting the LA County request on the Urban Institute website. How about that? I also want to say that in your expertise, I hope that you weave humanity into your expertise. Let me just tell you, okay? American Airlines, right there on the back of the seat. Ooh, Spotify. Ooh, podcast. Ooh, Brene Brown. Ooh, I fell asleep and woke up to Oprah and Dr. Sorry, I went blank. But they wrote a book called Unlocking Us. And so their reflections This is where I'm bringing my reflections is from this podcast, okay? So I don't want to, don't quote me, quoting my reflections. About weaving humanity into your experience and to stop pathologizing predictable outcomes. Because the question is, what do you expect the outcome to be? Are you surprised? Even if you're like, what happened to you? It's a reflection of maybe something that's lacking in the policy, in the program, right? In the guidance. What else in the scope, right? So, oh my gosh, no, we're not surprised. What do you expect? And lastly, the 3 E's. There's an event, there's an experience, and there's an effect. There's different impacts on everyone who experiences a natural disaster, for example. So bring that over to homelessness. The experience of the event on the individual person, right? So the event, the experience, and then any lingering effects. And this is where we drop the ball. The lingering effects. So like services and support to help people move on and continue with their life. It's not just about housing people, because when you really care, you go beyond that. This is not about cultural competency. This is not about racial equity. This is not about trauma-informed care. This is about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that if you cannot put yourself in someone's position and let that drive you to do something about it, get up, get out, and make room for the people who are going to come in here and love upon the people who need it.
Empathy. Everlasting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Okay, Adrienne Epstein. I want to introduce you. Adrienne Epstein serves as Senator Padilla's policy advisor for homelessness, housing, education, labor, and government operations. Prior to this role, she served as Congresswoman Barragan's legislative assistant and helped support her efforts to become co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Homelessness. So my first question for you is, when you reflect on the main findings of the study, where do you see opportunities for federal policy to improve outcomes for women experiencing homelessness?
First off, I just want to say how honored I am to be on this stage with such incredible leaders talking about something so important that I think, Tiffany, you really highlighted just how important this is and how much work there is still to do and how this is a great part of that process, but there's still so much more that needs to be done. So I really appreciate that question. I think this report really highlights the fact that housing solutions aren't one size fits all. We're never going to have one perfect solution because people's experiences with homelessness, housing insecurity are unique to them and their lived experiences, like you were talking about. But I think that's exactly why data like this is so needed and also so exciting, because it weaves in both the stories, the lived experiences that need to be said and brought to policymakers, but also solutions that are data-driven at the same time together, which is really important. But I think this poses an exciting opportunity to expand this research into other communities as well. Los Angeles County is definitely one of them, but also having this research in other places so that we can bring to the table other stakeholders, other policymakers, so that they can see directly the impacts and the experiences of their constituents, but specifically women experiencing homelessness. A lot of this report highlighted the unique barriers that women face. And I think when we can share those findings with stories from constituents, with policymakers, we can bring more people into that solution finding and how we can solve homelessness specifically for women. But one of the other things that there's just so many takeaways I want to talk about, but one of them was about the need for funding that's commensurate with the need of women experiencing homelessness. And that we, to do this work and to genuinely solve homelessness, we need an all hands on deck approach. And, for me, coming from Senator Padilla's office in the federal government, that involves us. We have to be a part of the solution. So one of the things I'm really excited that the senator will be rolling out next week, you're hearing it here first, is our Housing for All bill, which is really built around the fact that we need to think about housing on a big scale. We need to be thinking about affordable housing, solutions to end homelessness, but also one of my favorite parts is innovative, locally driven solutions that we know work, that we're piloting in places like Downtown Women's Center, that we're piloting in California, that we know are, changing lives every single day, but need the resources to do that work and upscale that type of work. And that we can invest in proven strategic solutions to solve homelessness because we do this work every single day. There's so many people across California, including Downtown Women's Center, who are doing this work. So that's immediately what comes to mind, but I think there's so many ways that we can get involved. I'm really excited for a report like this to be a great place to, continue the conversation.
So you answered my second question already, which is okay, because it was a great answer. So you were talking a little bit about some of the opportunities in Congress and bill that you're introducing. Tell me a little bit about what your constituents, like what you need from your constituents to drive some of that political will across Congress.
That's a great question. I think continuing to build awareness, events like this that we're bringing together stakeholders from across different organizations to come together with a similar message, saying we can rally around these ideas together, form a united front, and we all are going to support these efforts. But I think it's also engaging with members who have jurisdiction over these issues as well. I'm really thinking about, which is why I'm really excited, Chairwoman Waters is going to be coming, but also when we think about, the Appropriations Committee immediately comes to mind, but also being strategic with the appropriations process, thinking about congressionally directed spending opportunities. That's a great opportunity for, women-centered potential projects that various representatives, senators can review and send to the Appropriations Committee for consideration. And we can, right now start thinking about eligible projects, meeting with members to learn about their unique processes for how they go about funding or picking projects to submit to the committee. And then also thinking about eligibility, who can support these projects, but really spending the time to do that work. And that can start now, which I think is really exciting when we think about opportunities to fund these projects that we can also show work on a smaller scale sometimes, and then we can take those projects, those successes, and bring them more at the federal government level to potential bills, to ideas, to fund those types of projects at a larger scale for solutions.
Great. Okay, I have a couple more questions. Sam, here's a question for you. So you heard from women what they need, and certainly safety was a big concern, affordability in housing. Safety is something that can be addressed immediately. Housing really depends on a significant increase in resources and also supply, building housing, and also making sure that we have rental assistance and supportive services lined up. So, but what are the immediate needs of women beyond safety that they need right now?
So like I said, it's a 100-page report and there's a lot in there. And one of the things that we didn't talk about in our presentation was that it was 60% of women could not find a restroom if they needed to find a restroom. Those numbers were significantly worse among women experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And so we did ask women what, in the absence of housing, until there is housing, and obviously shelter, if there isn't shelter, what do women need? And hygiene was at the very top of that list. And so helping women to have the dignity of being able to take showers, helping women to be able to have the dignity of being able to go to the restroom. In the listening sessions, we heard stories about women who were sleeping in their cars and they were scared to use porta potties in parking lots where they were at. And so really thinking about how we make basic necessities safe and accessible for women is a top priority. The next one that we heard about was possessions and being able to take care of and keep your possessions, which we know is so important for anybody experiencing homelessness, but in particular, people who are in unsheltered situations might have documents that are essential for them to be able to get housed. And if they need to be able to keep track of those documents, they need places where they can put them while they go to work. Women were working, and they need places to put them while they go to the doctor's office. And so creating spaces and ways for women to be able to store their possessions is really important too.
Amy, I have another question for you. When I put my glasses on, I'm old, so I need progressives, and I've lost my progressives, so I have to put my glasses on to see the audience and take them off to see my notes. But when I put my glasses on, I can see this room of people who are working to end homelessness, many of whom I recognize. I see the USICH Director, Jeffrey Olivet, here, and so welcome. I want to just recognize you for being here. Thanks for being here. I see many service providers and people that I've worked with in the field, so thank you all for your hard work. My question, Amy, for you, since you have this room full of people who are potential partners or maybe existing partners as well, what would you ask of them to support the Downtown Women's Center?
Well, so many of you have partnered with Downtown Women's Center or in national causes similar, so thank you already. Please help us amplify the report. We're happy to share what we've learned in doing these reports if your communities want to do the same, or the blueprint that we use to pass the city council motion and the Board of Supervisors county motion and the state bill. I think we've got some traction in California, and we're learning a lot about what data exists and what data doesn't exist that we can start to share nationwide. I will feel like I have a fulfilled career if nationwide we really start to acknowledge this population, and not by ignoring any other population. But if we don't acknowledge single women, unaccompanied women, we are not serving everyone well. And I'd love to do more together.
Great. Tiffany, I have one question for you as well. These are unplanned questions, by the way. I'm extending this a little bit. My question for you is, as a person who's experienced homelessness and also as a person who reminds us to give voice to the women that we heard from and collected their stories, what advice would you give to all of us for engaging women who experience homelessness and really listening to their stories?
Engaging and listening.
What's most important to you as a part of when you joined the study and you were part of the steering committee? What was most important to you as you did that work?
My brain is just giving me all kind of stuff, so work with me for a second.
Yep.
First, I want to say, because I have something on my mind, I could not have done it without my car. I was concerned for my mental well-being in the shelter. So just trying to go and visit a shelter and see what it's going to be like. It's like, I'm going to question my mentality. So I can't come here or I'm going to be doubting who I know I am. Another thing is I got to express gratitude to McDonald's. So part of my homelessness is the mid-city area. And there's a McDonald's on La Brea, just north of San Vicente. And access to the bathroom, outside access, never locked. This steel, powerful door, go in there, lock it, do what I need to do to get cleaned up, going about my business. And so I'm gonna have to find a way to thank McDonald's and see if we can get some funding from them.
Sounds good.
And so trying to reflect on your question, the only thing that comes to my mind is just allowing our hearts to be in it. Hashtag bring your heart to work on social media. That's me, okay? And just hoping that you all keep love, justice, and equity in the forefront of your mind, knowing that I just know that it is the racism that has led to these situations. If I'm reflecting on Black people. And I know they're not the only homeless population, but 40% across the board, right? Pretty much. And in some places in the 80 percentile. And so this hatred, and you just need to know I'm not trying to offend anybody when I say what I'm gonna say. I don't believe that hatred is the white man. I don't believe that racism is the white man. And I believe that the evil spirit of hatred is what is behind the racism. And so if you're gonna get to what caused homelessness, this is a hatred is woven in there. And what's gonna end it is the opposite. What's the opposite? It's love, it's justice, it's equity. And so and it's running through your veins. Just tap into it.
Thank you. You were okay. I think we're going to end there. Thank you. Everyone, please join me in thanking our panel. Okay, you can come on down the stage. Okay, I told you we were going to start with opening remarks, but we are actually going to hear from Congresswoman Waters for closing remarks. I'm excited to introduce Congresswoman Waters. Congresswoman Waters, Maxine Waters, represents the 43rd Congressional District of California, which includes a large part of South Los Angeles, including the communities of Westchester, Playa del Carmen, and Watts, and the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County comprised of Lenox, West Athens, West Carson, Harbor, Gateway, and El Camino Village. Congresswoman Waters made history as the first woman and first African-American chair of the House Financial Services Committee and continues to serve as ranking member. Throughout her more than 40 years of experience and public service, Ranking Member Waters has gained a well-earned reputation as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, children, people of color, and the poor. Under her leadership as chair, the House Financial Services Committee had its first ever full committee hearing on homelessness and passed several pieces of legislation to support people who are experiencing homelessness. So I am pleased to welcome Congressman Waters, who's going to walk through the door. Nope, okay. I'm told 2 minutes, so I think if you want to just talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes, we can take a little bit of a break. I'm going to take the pressure off myself, actually. Okay. Okay, we are actually ready. Please put your hands together and welcome Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Well, hello everyone, and I'd like to thank Ms. Mary Cunningham for the warm welcome. First, I'd like to thank the Urban Institute for your years of incredible work and hosting today's event on such a critical issue plaguing our Los Angeles community. Today, nearly 600,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night in this country, while we've had and we've seen nationwide decreases in homelessness in, the past few years. I want to tell you that we know that the rates among underserved populations are persistently high, as those and these are the same populations that are struggling with some of the highest cost burdens and disproportionate rates of evictions. For example, According to the 2023 Homeless Count report conducted by the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, there was a 2.4% increase in the number of women experiencing homelessness in California, or more than 23,000 individuals between 2022 and 2023, according to the 2023 Homeless Count report conducted by the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. There was a 2.4% increase in the number of women experiencing homelessness in California, or more than, again, 23,000 individuals between 2022 and 2023. So I find this deeply concerning, but one thing we must know is that housing is a woman's issue. The stark increase in the number of women experiencing homelessness provides undeniable evidence of the vulnerability and adversities women face. This is especially true for Black women in Los Angeles County, who, as evidence in today's report, are overrepresented among women experiencing homelessness. We know that for far too long, women had to grapple with inequitable access to medical care, education, employment opportunities, and fair pay. Now consider the added burden of losing a home and the fear and trauma and endangerment that is too often experienced. It is a profound injustice that an increasing number of women find themselves without stable housing, further highlighting the challenges and obstacles they encounter, such as economic hardship, domestic violence, and eviction. When women are forced into homelessness, we see the additional barriers they face, from feeling unheard and unsafe in shelters to fearing violence on the streets. And when women become homeless, their children do as well, making our need for action all more urgent. Unacceptable and heartbreaking stories have emerged, such as elderly women who are retiring without Social Security and into homelessness, violence against homeless women that further derails their ability to get back on their feet, pregnant women who have been turned away from shelters due to a lack of needed accommodations like bunk beds and bottom bunk beds, and women who have nowhere else to go after giving birth are left with few alternatives other than to remain in this cycle of homelessness. The Urban Institute's 2023 Los Angeles County Women's Needs Assessment sheds light on these issues, recounting a harrowing story of a woman who, after becoming homeless and seeking housing assistance, tragically lost custody of her children to Child Protective Services after struggling to secure permanent housing. She now faces the heart-wrenching reality of being unable to reunite her children. In fact, today's report finds that over half of women experiencing homelessness in LA County have children, and we know that this often results in profound trauma and harm inflicted upon the entire family for generations, from health and educational outcomes to wealth generation and financial stability. This is what we call injustice, and we must account for these distressing gaps within our homeless system. We need all hands on deck to implement comprehensive strategies that account for the needs of women, especially the disproportionate needs of older women and women of color. This includes the continuums of care like the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, homeless service and shelter providers, fair housing groups, healthcare providers, street outreach crews, and other critical partners. Until we work together and across sectors to address the unique needs of underserved populations, we cannot fully succeed in our fight to end homelessness. Well, when I was chairwoman of the House Financial Services Committee, I secured historic levels of housing relief through pandemic legislation to help bolster these efforts, including $46.6 billion in emergency rental assistance, the first $25 billion of which, I point out, was supported in a bipartisan manner. These funds help stymie the homeless population and the pipeline during the pandemic, stabilizing millions of renters and overwhelmingly women-headed households, and $14 billion in homelessness assistance, including the first of its kind emergency housing voucher program targeted to people experiencing and at risk of homelessness, including victims of gender-based crimes under the Violence Against Women Act. Nearly 7,000 new vouchers were made available throughout the city and county of Los Angeles. With these funds, we have helped to rehouse and provide services to over 140,000 people experiencing homelessness nationwide and in the city of Los Angeles. Throughout the pandemic, I also pressed the federal government to take every action possible to house the most vulnerable LA County. And throughout funding, I secured in the American Rescue Plan Act. We proactively included programmatic flexibilities to ensure paperwork requirements were not a barrier to getting people housed with emergency housing vouchers and allowed funding to be used for supportive services. Building on these lessons learned during the pandemic, the Biden administration recently announced the launch of its All Inside initiative. This plan, which will focus on the city of Los Angeles and the state of California, in addition to a few other jurisdictions throughout the country, will dedicate federal staff to work closely with our local officials and organizations to more quickly respond to our homelessness needs. The findings of the Downtown Women's Center and Urban Institute's needs assessment should be shared with All Inside Initiative. This initiative, the All Inside Initiative, to help target and maximize the use of the American Rescue Plan dollars and other funds that my committee has fought to secure. In fact, one of the key barriers to permanent housing that was referenced in the needs assessment was a long waiting list for housing choice vouchers and public housing. So I appreciate the support and the advocacy that many of you who are here in this room today have been providing since our efforts last Congress to secure that $150 billion in investments for fair and affordable housing in the Build Back Better Act. This funding is more crucial than ever. As the cost of housing continues to reach all-time highs, and as House Republicans just this week continue their campaign to defund affordable housing by nearly 30% before last fiscal year levels. That's why last month, as a top Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, I reintroduced my groundbreaking legislation, housing package, which includes my Housing Crisis Response Act and my Ending Homelessness Act of 2023. Together, these bills would not only create nearly 1.4 million affordable housing units, including public housing, but would also ensure that every single family that qualifies for rental assistance receives a housing choice voucher. It is these types of investments that will help us end homelessness in Los Angeles County and across the country. So, with that, I'd like to thank the Downtown Women's Center for their continued dedication and tireless efforts in serving the women of Los Angeles. I would like to thank the Urban Institute for lending their expertise in helping to expand the Downtown Women's Center needs assessment to the entire county of Los Angeles for the first time ever. This assessment only strengthens our understanding of how women are experiencing homelessness on the ground and further underscores the urgency needed to provide dignified housing and shelter options that meet the needs of women, including across age and racial lines. I look forward to further diving into the research that will be presented today and continuing the fight to end homelessness alongside all of you here. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, despite, being here for this particular reason, to thank the Institute for what is being done to help understand and identify all of these gaps. Just before I left the office to go on the floor for a vote on any number of issues, I had a talk with my staff because we were talking about all hands on deck to deal with homelessness and what much more can be done by so many to deal with this issue. And the issue that we were dealing with had to do with the fact that in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, the Housing Authority was selling vacant land to private interests, not for the development of housing, not for the development of affordable housing, but for other reasons. And when we questioned this, we were told by HUD, there's nothing in the law that says that if a housing authority has vacant land, they can do whatever they want to do with it. Yet, when you talk with our Democratic caucus, every member of that caucus says that homelessness is a #1 priority in their jurisdiction, whether we're talking about urban areas or whether we're talking about rural, suburban areas, et cetera. But if, in fact, it's such a priority for all of us, we've got to deal with the kind of issues that continue to allow the increase in homelessness. And I think there's a lot that we can do and a lot that's been identified in the work that the Institute has been doing. So not only do I thank you for this work, with a particular emphasis, of course, on Los Angeles and Los Angeles County. What is happening in my city and in that county is unconscionable. And we can do better than we're doing with the resources that we're getting. Systems must be changed. They must be reevaluated. They must be understood. We must not think about what we're doing to put people on the street. I could tell you any number of stories about how our own systems are putting people on the street. One last one, and I'll shut up, and that's this. In the city of St. Louis, where an individual was trying to find a better living situation because the units that they were living in were just uninhabitable. They were not inhabitable. And so he found another place to live. He went to the manager of this HUD-assisted apartment building, and he told them that he had found a better place and that he was leaving. And of course, he was telling the apartment manager because he wanted to continue his Section 8 that allowed him to be in these units to begin with. And so he told the manager, and he moved, and that he was informed that his Section 8 was going to be taken away from him because he had not filled out the proper papers. And of course, he said, but I told the apartment manager, that's all I know to do. I didn't know about these papers. And when they questioned the apartment manager, she said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And he was going to be put on the street and denied. Well, of course, it was in St. Louis. It was not in LA County. But the people, because I'm originally from St. Louis, a lot of them know me, and they will call. And so when I questioned them about the decision and what this person was supposed to do, they said, well, the person can appeal it, but they have to do it within so many days. And if they don't do it in whatever it is, these 10 days, then we cannot do anything about their appeal. So this person was in a position where they told the apartment manager where the 10 days was now up. The apartment manager forgot, and they were going to be on the street. And of course, I challenged them. I had to challenge them about the fact that this person was supposed to know what papers they were supposed to be filled out and who was to give them to them, or how he was to get them. And what I found was the system did not work that way. It did not work to inform the tenants about what they needed to do if, in fact, they were going to move. It did not talk about the role of the apartment manager. It did not say that the tenants knew where to get the papers, how to fill them out, or anything, but they were about to make another person homeless. And so that's a little gap in the system, but there are many gaps in the system. That's why I'm so supportive of Housing First. I'm supportive of Housing First because you get that person off the street, out from under these tents, from sleeping in somebody's backyard. You get them in, and then you deal with what should be done by social workers to staff the person and to understand who they are and to understand, what resources they may have in family members, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that they could be connected. So what you're doing with the Institute here is helping with these kinds of issues. I cannot, and you may not know all of the gaps, but working and, studying and, analyzing all of these things hopefully will help close these gaps so that those who are supposed to be helping do not end up doing harm to the very people they're supposed to be helping. There are lots of stories out there, but the fact of the matter is women are in a terrible situation. And I want to tell you, aged women, mature women, older women who don't have Social Security have nowhere to go. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm going to have to just run out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do 3 rounds of applause before Congresswoman Waters leaves. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for your extraordinary leadership. I want to thank the Downtown Women's Center for just an amazing partnership with the Urban Institute. The work that we can do together is just has a lot of power, and I'm excited to hopefully continue that partnership. I also want to thank our panelists, Sam, Amy, Adrienne, and Tiffany. Please join me in thanking them. My last applause is for all of you. I want to thank you, all of you, for being here, for the work that you do, and for your continued partnership. Give yourself a round of applause. And please join us. I think I heard there's still drinks out there and snacks, and we would love for you to stay and just chat with us. But thanks for being here tonight.